Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for always all your support. As you can see in the back over there, new painting that was done from Tom from Canada. He painted me, and it's going to be the book cover for my ninth book. I have a very cool guest on today. Um, I've been on his. We did an episode a while back, and I've been dying to have him on. And I just wanted to get his background because our or his how he's been in the truther community and all that kind of stuff. Because we have similar background stories, and we both kind of ended up in the same place. So let me bring Sean on. How's it going, Sean?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Good. So I sent you this message, but for people who don't know this about me, because this might come out at some point, people are always like talking about the news and everything. My grandfather was a producer at CBS News in the city. My father was the same thing too. And Dan Rather's book, his autobiography, Dan Rather got famous because he had the Kennedy story an hour before anyone. The person he called into CBS in Manhattan was my grandfather, and he named him by name. And my dad was a producer and an editor at CBS News in the city too. Now, I used to go there with him, and I used to know all the people there. And I'd like to think that the news was better and different back then, but I was just too young and I didn't really have that kind of thing going on. But I was an actor in high school, and and college as well too. And I can relate to you in the sense that so I grew up in the '90s, right? And my cousin is the bassist in Fish, and they really kind of blew up then. So it's kind of like all anybody ever wanted to talk to me about. I don't know if you can relate, but so we have some similar things, but we both ended up in the truther community, right? With a very public family. So I want to know your story, man. I want to know your story. I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this, but I want to know what got you into the truther community. Was there a specific thing that kind of sent you down the rabbit hole? And basically, yeah, let's start with that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I talked on this on different platforms, but I mean, the truther community is like kind of a vague word
Right.
because obviously there are people that are more focused on Kennedy assassination, and others are more focused on 9/11, and now you've got obviously a big group that's focused on like COVID and the vaccines and all this. But to me, I guess you'd say like I started by being in JFK as a kid. Uh, 7 years. What was I? 7 years old, I think, when I was in the film. 6 years old, and so it already was like disseminating into my consciousness, so that when I got to high school, um, and even before then, I mean, I was like, in fifth grade, and my dad was like, making Nixon, and he's like, you know, telling me about, very, how do you say, he's trying to share some information about Nixon. I'm like, I'm just a kid trying to, basically trying to understand these things. So I think really it sunk in when I was in high school, like 14, 15. I started really reading Howard Blum's work on the CIA, understanding how the CIA is operating, and involved with coups, and supporting death squads, and poisoning crops, and you
Did
name
someone
it.
introduce you to that? I mean, that's quite a book to pick up when you're 14, 15. Like,
Well, my dad did. I mean, my dad was obviously doing movies like JFK and stuff, so he was
right.
reading a lot. And so he would just, he would like suggest, oh, if we talk about things, then then it would just come up, and I would like look through his library and just like pick out some books and read, and just kind of expand my knowledge in that sense. So that was still in the late '90s into the early 2000s, and then like obviously 9/11 happened. That was odd from like just from anyone who's just observing. Like I didn't dive into it until a couple of years later. Um, what was the guy's work? There was a really good book by I want to say like Nafez or something like that, and he was a journalist who just like posed really compelling questions and problems with the whole narrative, and how we are already basically ready for war in Afghanistan because we wanted to get hold of access to the pipelines. And not just us, it was like Unocal Oil and all these companies that were basically over there trying to get access to the pipelines, and basically trying to get into Afghanistan was a big play
Right.
economically. And also the whole Brzezinski strategy of like the underbelly of Eurasia, which is the Central Asia, from Kazakhstan and all the stans, right? All
Mhm.
Afghanistan is part of that. So all those stans being part, like basically the underbelly. So you want to basically, these are important countries strategically to get access to for energy, for politics, right? Because you want to keep Russia and China at odds and unstable. That was always the strategy
Right.
historically. So anyway, so I'm like reading this, learning. I read David Icke, probably like 2002 time period, and that was like even more expansive because I was like, well, okay, this really gets into some mind blowing stuff on the alien question. Because I read like Jim Mars's work on Alien Agenda, and I was open to the UFO stuff, but I think it really started to open my mind to this idea of like multidimensionality. And I studied history, so I was like at college, so I was like continuously reading on on different things, and you get there's Procopius, I think, wrote the Secret History of Justinian, who was the emperor, the Byzantine emperor, and he's like writing in the book about how like Justinian would like shapeshift into this demon, and like this is just these are things that you like when you read history, you realize like there's a lot of stuff like this that's talked about
Yeah.
throughout history.
It's interesting too. It's interesting too, real quick, Sean, because you said 2002, right around the time you started reading Ike. He's credited for the whole reptilian idea from his book from '99, but it goes so much further back than that.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea why it got pinned on Ike? Is it a way to discredit him?
It's honestly, it's like people that just get like, oh, lizard people rule the world. I mean, it's just very reductionist. It's like it's a good way. I mean, you get like whatever, you get people all the time who are just like reductionist. They're like, oh, you're an anti-vaxxer. Oh, you're this. I did my docuseries Best Kept Secret, and it like goes step by step into how mind control, fundamentally how mind control works and disseminated through media and just like many of the different apparatuses that are used by the elite, whether it's mind control, human trafficking. We get into the later chapters, this talk about like reptilians and yeah, I mean, it's like the archons were discussed in the Gnostic lore, right, going back to 2,000 plus years, and that may have been influenced from the East, from Persia and other traditions. But John Lamb, who wrote a lot about Gnosticism, talks about how like the archons were described visually as like dragons, dracons, and so you get all this lore about dragons throughout history and like the seeding of the earth, right? Like what I think the Chinese talk about, like the dragon being part of the creation of humans, and
Yeah.
it's silly. The feathered serpent of Quetzalcoatl in Mexican traditions, it's like, or Latin American traditions. I mean, it's all there. It's just a question of whether or not you just take it as, someone's mythologies, or is it, but I believe mythologies are based in truth. Now, is it based, most of these are oftentimes also based in like, you could say, astronomical forces, right? As far as like planets in, whether there was another planet that was destroyed, creating one of those asteroid belts, or, again, like this whole mythology of like Tiamat, which was a destroyed planet, right? And that was, in some descriptions, it was like a dragon, but essentially something is blowing up in the heavens and it could look like a fiery dragon across the sky, right? So there is something to that idea that, as you know, with your work with the Bible, it's like a lot of these things can be part of astronomy or astrology, right? As
Well,
far
I
as
mean,
like,
it makes sense if you think about it. These ancient people, right? They may have just figured out how to write. They looked at the stars. They saw all this crazy shit going on there. So they made up stories so that they could tell their children about it. Then their children grew up with these stories, and then they told their children. Then eventually it found its way to clay tablets and everything. I mean, it makes complete sense.
yeah, there's an aspect of that. I don't think these people were primitive. Like the more you dive into it,
Right.
like Graham Hancock's research, and then obviously he's just riffing on a lot of other, so-called forbidden archaeology, right? And
Right.
testimonies about Atlantis, but also just the evidence is like, these aren't primitive peoples that can build pyramids.
Right.
We were just at one of the mountains. The pyramids are just mind blowing. But you go to like the mountains here, and even in the Americas, there are thousands of these mountains that are built that are, what are they, a few hundred feet high. But you're like, I was walking and like, they're like trying to say that they just took like millions of buckets of like dirt, and clay to like make these mounds. You're sitting there going like, really?
I think they tried to make it in Japan, right? They had all, because Japan has the most futuristic stuff on the planet, because for whatever reason, and they like tried to make a pyramid at like a quarter size with all the modern day equipment, and it failed miserably.
I remember something like that. Yeah, one of these archaeologists or engineers, architects, who was just like kind of like, yeah, I can do that, no problem, and then it just didn't work out. No, and it's just the idea of just, yeah, get more people to carry 200-ton blocks hundreds of miles.
Right.
Good luck. I mean, just we have to reassess the, like, what is reality, and so that's
Yeah.
always been my journey, is reassessing what is reality. Because you talk about media, it's like, when you understand, as I do to a certain extent, I don't know the full extent of it, but I have a certain understanding of media and how it's crafted as theater, right? And a lot of things that are put out there and disseminated publicly as theater, whether it's politics or broadcasts, right? It's like it's theater. It's meant to like manipulate your emotions. It's meant to
Right.
focus your attention, and it's a lot of the real truth is behind the scenes. It's done in ways where it's, how do you say? Um, there's like spell casting, but spell casting oftentimes is done through energy, so you don't necessarily know all the details of how some of these things will manifest.
Right.
Because when you're working with energies, it's like you're working to manifest something, and there are universal forces that once you start to tap into, it's like it's just like you basically it's like, how do you say, it's like motivating the ocean to start a tsunami, but then you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is something to this where a lot of people think that like they control everything. The dark side controls everything. To me, it's like God controls everything ultimately. So
Right.
the dark is being allowed to do what it's doing to help our awakening, to help us to see
Right.
we are being manipulated as humans, that to help
Well,
us remember our divine light and to step into that light so that we become more empowered
Well,
beings.
we know that the good doesn't exist without the bad. It's in duality. Everything's a duality. We have a binary star. Everything is binary. Everything is duality. In fact, they try and tell you this in the Bible in Isaiah 45:7. It says, I, the Lord, create the light and the dark. I create the good and the evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. People don't really understand that the idea of only good would be something like heaven, where
Yeah,
all the angels are blowing trumpets and singing the Lord's praises all day. What happened with him? He got bored.
that's it. That's it. I used to do that. I mean, I used to literally like play games that you say like thought experiments. It's like 4 or 5 years old. I just remember like thinking about like, well, what happens? Okay, you die and go to heaven, and then you get to do whatever you want, and then you get bored, so you
Yeah,
come back here, right? And it was
that's
like
what it is.
I was already like
That's
thinking in these ways.
that's what it is. In fact, you're talking about universal forces, right? So you've obviously heard of the revelation of the method and the idea that these people are um, in the high up, like with the Super Bowl halftime show, or just the things that they're doing. They have to show us it because they're terrified of karma.
Mm,
Because it's like the Andrew Tate thing, where he says, "If I give you an apple and I don't tell you it's poisoned and you eat it, I just killed you. But if I
right.
write poisoned apple somewhere small on the basket and hand it to you, right? That's that whole thing. I think that karma is the only true balance in at least our dimension.
Mm,
And the people that are doing nefarious things, I mean, the whole Balenciaga thing, this is why they come out with this stuff. This is
right.
why they show it, because it makes no sense whatsoever to show that unless there's a thing behind it. So I don't
Right.
know what you think about that.
No, I do believe that. I think it has to do. But that's also just the revelation of like, you could go back to, not to various traditions, right? Hermeticism talks about it, but there's many traditions. It's like as above, so below, as within, so without. You
Right.
can't be something hidden that's not at some level exhibited, right? Exerted. So like that which was within has to reveal itself in some way. And so we're not in a universe where it's a fact. I'd say you could say that it's holographic universe, right, where everything is reflective. So
Have you read Talbot's book?
you can't completely hide the devil. You can't completely hide the
Right.
evil, right? It's like it's there. It's done. It has to be made in such a way that it becomes alluring. And that's what they talked about. What the devil's greatest trick was, making the world believe he didn't exist. I don't know if it was that making the world didn't believe he didn't exist. It was just like making it so tempting, like the Matrix, where it's like, yeah, don't you want to be part of the Super Bowl party? Yeah, don't you want to, be with the Victoria's Secret models, with Les Wexner, who's best friends with Epstein, and who knows how wicked this guy is, right? But like
Yeah.
now it's starting to be exposed. But like, don't you want to be part of that? Like, of course, the guy that owns Victoria's Secret is a total, how
Yeah.
do you say, demonic player he literally talks about, having a divok that guides him, right? Spirit, like
Most of them do. Most of them do. They have a handler and they have a spirit. They usually do. They venerate. So in the way that the Catholics venerate, like let's say Saint Anthony or something, where you just pray to him, light candles or some things like that. They have things like spirit cooking or other kinds of things. Like you saw that picture of Lady Gaga and Marina Abramovich, right, with that guy in the bath, like shit like that.
Yeah, and just like it's fun. Hey, don't you want to come here and pretend to be drinking blood? And like, how cool are we, right?
Yeah,
So fun. Let's go be cannibals.
So one of the things that I wonder is what is it going to take to change globally? Because I don't know if you've heard of the 20% rule, but basically you come up with an idea and you get 20% of the people on board with it, it usually takes over for the rest of the people. It usually becomes that. So I'm wondering, like, what is it going to take? Because right now you've got a bunch of people telling truth on social media platforms, doing podcasts, sharing the truth, sharing their information, getting censored. And then is it just an ongoing battle with that? Like, what do you think it'll take to reverse all this stuff? Or can we even do that because evil is supposed to be a part of our nature?
I don't know that evil is supposed to be a part of our nature. I think that there's a transition coming. We're in this phase of transitioning, whether they talk about the Hopi tradition or the Aquarian age. I mean, it's like we're in this transition phase here, right? In this time period, this 21st century is a transition phase. Right. So on one level, you'll see it technologically with the transhuman agenda. Like that's one expression of the transition is like, hey, let's edit. Truly, transhumanism is a satanic religion. It's like, let's recreate the human. Let's recreate the biosphere. Let's recreate nature.
Move consciousness into the machines.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, but like the whole idea of like, let's modify nature. We can do it better.
Yeah.
Right. Which has basically been scientism for the last couple hundred years, especially, but really since the Enlightenment, it's like there's an aspect of like, let's do it better than nature does it.
Yeah.
And this is warned about in the Bible. This is what Satan was talking about. God didn't do it right. Let's do it better. So there's this transition, and then there's like the actual evolution of the human. That if those that are not tempted by that apple, literally like Apple computers, right? Tempted by the apple of like, hey, bring it inside of you, eat the apple, bring the technology inside of you. Think about it like that.
Yeah.
We are not tempted in that path. Like there is an evolution happening, and we are waking up. And the question now becomes like, okay, the game, there's one level of like seeing corruption. There's one level of seeing, like, we call it out, like, whatever. You really want to show us, this video or that nonsense or this shot, like whatever. Okay, you can distract us all you want, but we get it. We're seeing through it. We know you guys are corrupt. We know you're trafficking kids. We know you're doing horrible, horrible things behind the scenes, not just to say what you're doing, literally like force vaccinating people the last few years that are killing them or damaging them. And then there's like the next, there's like, okay, what happens next though? Where do we go from here? Because when you recognize corruption, it's like, now it's time to part the Red Sea and literally move your people out. And I think that's where we're heading, is that like, okay, what's the new system? What's the new world going to look like? Where are we going? That's outside of, Pharaoh's Egypt, basically, metaphorically.
Right. And what are your thoughts on that? Where do you think we're headed? Because obviously some people are going to get stuck in the matrix and some people are going to break free. So what do you think is going to happen? And I know that we're so early in the age of Aquarius that I'm asking you to speculate for a couple hundred years from now.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking like, what is the fifth dimensional experience of life going to look like? And it's all speculative at this point. So, I mean, for me, my reality is it's going to be more. It already is in that direction, but it's like, we need more of is like more ease, more holistic being, less of like a Saturnian structure of time, and just more of like the now. Okay, this is what happens. This is what I have to do now. Okay, I finish it. Open to receive what comes next. Right? Like that's the way we're supposed to be living.
Now, do we have to go off the grid to do that, or can we do that in our like home?
Forget the grid. Okay. Like the whole like. It's like Neo. Like you can go into a Starbucks if you want. You can go into it, but ultimately the point is we need to assert our sovereignty so that we can separate the living man from the corporation. And we already have that practice. And I think it's going to be more like we can emphasize this more as we evolve, especially meaning people that are moving literally into become nationals as opposed to citizens, because being a citizen of a country makes you an indentured servant, essentially.
Right. I always tell people to look up the word citizen or person. I actually did an interview with Carrie Adams and Brian Parker from Tactical Sovereignty, and she was talking about being sovereign, using the IRS, making it work for you, auditing
Right.
things, doing that kind of absolutely. So you're on board with that.
Absolutely. This is the way we're meant to be. We're supposed to be the living man and living woman, right? We're born, how do you say, we're supposed to be born free, and
Right.
actually we're supposed to be endowed, with not just with our rights, but our rights do include freedoms, and the freedom to do things and to act without becoming indentured servants of these
Right.
systems, right? In fact, the system should be working for us. Every one of us should be our own bank. Why
Yeah.
not? We should be able to do the projects that, hey, if you're in agreement with me and I'm in agreement, we should be able to come together and make it happen. We shouldn't have to go to the bank to get a loan for us to do something together, right?
When I was talking to Carrie in one of my interviews, she said that she was somewhere and one of these really like high up people in the banking industry had a little too much to drink, and he was talking to her, and they were just bullshitting about this and that, and they're talking about making deals and everything. And she asked him how much money we're talking in this, and he goes, "Oh, at this level, we don't trade in money; we trade in credit."
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a credit to. I mean, exactly. We're supposed to have credit. Every one of us is supposed to be born with credit because we're here to produce and do things. Even if whatever we're partaking in, we're still contributing to our societies. And everyone's gonna have different levels of ambition, right? Some will want to actually like build new cities, and others will just want to be like, hey, I want to go and party in it. Now,
Yeah,
obviously, it's unfortunate that if if your only attitude is like laziness, but I don't think most people are generated that way. I think humans are actually we want to partake in things. We want to be part of things, even if it's like people are playing games. They just want to be part of something.
right.
So
I always tell people, Sean, I always tell people this because I try and give them advice on it. I don't drink alcohol. I think that alcohol, I quit about a year and a half ago, and your life just gets so much better. I'm not talking about a casual drinker anyway, that's fine, but alcohol lowers your vibration. And what I tell people is this: when you drink and you're drunk, it brings you to your reptilian midbrain. That's what it does, because you think like an animal. Because what are the three things you want? Food, sex, and sleep. That's all you care about when you're drunk. And you could do so much better than that. But when you're talking, it's okay. When you're talking about um, this kind of stuff being sovereign, let me ask you a question. How much longer do you think we can go pretending that the financial system isn't going to collapse?
I don't think it's going to collapse. I think that they have a
You think
control.
they'll keep finding ways to just beat the
No,
dead
no,
horse and drag
we're
it?
looking at a transition. There's because it's all an illusion.
It is.
Like no one's paying $32 trillion of debt. No one's paying that. Let's just be real. So what do we have is like, okay, we'll just keep pretending like we can carry this on. Like no, like if they continue this attitude, eventually it will collapse because then you'll start getting people calling it whatever it's a Chinese or anyone else who's lent some of that money to basically to buy our bonds or whatnot. I mean, there will at some point be a collapse if they carry this on, but it has to be a rigged game. That's why it's rigged because
Yeah.
you can't accumulate $31 trillion of debt that you can't pay off if it wasn't
Right.
rigged. Like let's just be
Absolutely. Yeah,
real.
it's true. But here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. No one seems to give a shit about raising the debt ceiling, right? Or taking out more money or sending money to Ukraine or any of that kind of stuff. Nobody cares about just throwing money away. However, if you notice, they go seriously apeshit about whether or not they can pay the debt back, and not the debt. I'm talking about the interest on the loans. If
Yeah.
you notice, so what
That's all
happens
they're
in the
paying. That's all
world?
they care to pay is the interest. And if they
But what
can't pay
happens if
the
the
interest, the
US
Federal
decides
Reserve,
not to pay the interest? Do other
right?
countries come after us?
The Federal Reserve system. I mean, that's the question. That's why, to me, the path forward is going to be a transition. There's the Great Reset reality, which is basically everyone is enslaved and doesn't own anything, as Klaus Schwab said, and you're all basically just debtors, which you already are, I guess, but like permanent debtors. And then there's, to me, the more sovereign based system. People have been talking about a quantum financial system, realizing that debt could just as quickly become credit. I mean, you could literally just turn it around and be like, okay, now it's a credit.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Right.
it's just like there are many ways of resolving things. So as we know, like 7 years in the biblical tradition, and Judaism was always like 7 years to forgive debts, right?
Yeah.
We've gone way beyond that. Most people are, carrying on to their 30th year of debt or whatever it is, their
Yeah.
50th year of debt, right? But again, like we're at that place where, to me, where the system cannot, as you said, it can't hold. People are seeing through it. They're not going to let it just collapse into like total chaos, because ultimately they lose power if they let it all collapse. Right. But to me, there's going to be a transition into a more holistic economy for, I mean,
You
hopefully,
think trading value for value?
if the
Like
White
if I
House,
come up to you, if I fly down to you and I say, listen, I need you to shoot a video for me, but I will build you a barn. Like
no, not like that. No,
no,
there will
not
be
like
currency.
that.
No, there will be currency. There's always going to be some kind of currency.
Okay.
But whether it's a crypto, whether it's a digital currency, whether it's a physical currency, I don't know. It's just that it could be all of the above. I'm just simply saying that if the white hats are doing what I believe they're doing, we will have a more holistic sovereign system available to us.
I talk about the Milgram experiment a lot, or actually I've mentioned it before, where basically you had, for people who don't know what that is, let me just share it real quick. So they had people come in to a building and sit down in a chair, and what they had them do was they gave them a button, right? It was a zapper, and what it is it
I've
was
seen it. I mean, I studied this in college in my psych class. Yeah.
Right. The interesting thing about it, so basically they zapped. There was someone in the other room, but what they didn't know is that person was an actor. They weren't actually strapped up to a bunch of electrodes. So what they would do is they would read them questions.
They don't know that they're not actually torturing someone, but they
right, exactly.
The person in the other room gets a wrong answer. They continue to up the voltage,
and all it took was
at some point there actually could have, like, the voltage was so high, they're like, this could actually be fatal.
Right. But what happened is it was literally just a guy in a plain lab coat. There was no name on it. It was just a lab coat. He looked like he worked there. And he said, please continue. It's important. And what they found was that 80% of people that participated in that, 80%, 4 out of 5 people will do what they're told.
By someone in authority.
Yeah, which is absolutely crazy, because I still believe to this day that I mean, look at what just happened with everything.
But that's I mean, that was also, it was an experiment, and it's still an experiment, but actually it's not really, it's more successful for humanity than not.
It's
because if you actually want a more sovereign world, then people that are truly compliant can't be part of it, can they?
Well, that's a good point. But it's also so I don't know if you know this, Sean, but like I've sent you my books. So I don't know if you've read them yet, but I've sent you the books. They're basically 1984 meets Da Vinci Code. That's kind of how I do it, because I realized early on when I was studying all the greats like Orwell or Philip K. Dick or any of these guys, right? Truth and fiction is how you bring new people in. Okay, you don't pigeonhole yourself into a nonfiction book, and then if you don't have the criteria, if you don't have the credentials behind it, no one's going to read it anyway. You write a fiction book, the fiction series. So that's kind of what I did. It's the whole thing is it's just very interesting to me, because I kind of feel like with the astrotheology within my books too, the astrotheology. I don't know if you ever heard of the Book of Emmanuel or the Book of Emmanuel. It was found by I can't remember the guy's name.
Is that the one that Jesus Christ? The one that the one who saw the Palladians?
Yes, the guy from the 70s with the UFO pictures.
Yeah.
He supposedly found this document, but you know what I found that was interesting? They found this document they found this gospel. In the gospel, they talk about how it's 500,000 people is the proper amount of people to be able to live peacefully on earth. And then in the Bible, it says the Lord said that if you do not do right by this, and I'm paraphrasing it, by the way, I did a whole video on it, it will be tenfold. It will be 10 times that. Well, at the time, 10 times the 500,000 brought it to 5 billion, which is, or it was 100-fold, whatever it was. It brought it to 5 billion, which is how many people there were. And the interesting thing too is that 7 years after this document was discovered, the Georgia Guidestones went up with their 500 million quote. So I think that's where they got it from, whether it's true or not. And I can't remember the guy's name. It's evading me, but it's amazing. Like the thing with the grasshoppers, you know, eating the crickets, eating the grasshoppers. If you've ever read Leviticus 11, they tell you that you can eat jointed legged insects. You know, they're pulling it from the Bible. I have this thought that the people, because my work, my astrotheology work, the cipher that I came up with, it's the 12 zodiac signs and their keywords for it. So for Leo the lion, it would be lion, lioness, cub. For the twins, it would be like brothers or Gemini. And I have this code that I've applied to everything from Sumerian text all the way to the Quran, and it finds it in all of them. And not only does it find this stuff, but they make distinct patterns in the sky. And that's what I've been trying to get out there. And what I've seemed to have found is that the same code applies to every ancient holy text, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the Quran. Mm-hmm. And I think that the people that wrote the original ones are still the people who are writing the new ones.
Okay.
To be honest, I think it's the same group of people.
What's the code you're seeing?
So the code that I'm seeing, which is basically my work, is it basically what my work basically shows in one sense of it is that the Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac, and it just lists out the stars. It lists out the stars. It lists out the zodiac. It shows that. I could send you a video if you've ever got some time. I don't know if you will, but like I will send you a video of my work, and it's just basically an amalgamation of everything. You'll find that like they'll mention like, bring me a sheep, bring me a calf, bring me a goat, you know, and those three are signs of the zodiac. Now it's interesting because the sheep and the calf, the bull, are connecting signs on the zodiac, so they make patterns. And you'll see patterns like 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row, like a star in this. Like, for example, the Salus Borealis is the donkey. When they talk about the donkeys, that's in Cancer. And between Gemini and Taurus is Orion's belt. And like I've just been accumulating this information, and just it's starting to like catch on. And people like Jordan Maxwell, Santos Bonacci, people that I've learned heavily from. I teach for Santos now. I was very close with Jordan Maxwell. They co-signed my work.
You think that it's a flat Earth then?
You know what? Honestly, I don't give a shit about flat Earth because it's not my fight. I really don't, because I'll tell you what.
I interviewed Santos, and that was one of the things that I was like, I'm not so much a flat earther, but yeah.
Yeah, he kind of went hard with that, and I've told him that I don't care about it. And I'll tell you why I don't care, Sean. It's because like with our work, we're trying to wake people up with knowledge that they can use. Let me ask you a question. Hypothetically, Sean, if the Earth is flat and you were to figure it out, obviously the Earth is flat or it's round. I'm not talking about maybe it's donut shaped or any of these kind of wild physics traits.
It's a Taurus.
Yeah, it's a Taurus.
Whole like they thought it was like a Taurus, or they had like an interesting thing where they actually thought that you remember that the Arctos thing where they thought that it was like the sky was actually, we're looking inside the Earth, the sky. There was one of the, not all the Nazis, but there was one of these Nazi scientists, and it became like kind of a part of their ideology, I think.
Right. But
it's interesting.
Obviously, one of these things is right. Obviously, one of them is right. But let me ask you a question. Who does it help? How does that help anything? Does it stop a control system? As much as flat earthers and round earthers want to fight over it, and no one gets more pissed at you when you don't listen to them than a flat earther, by the way.
Yeah.
For some reason, they're like the worst. For some reason, they're arguing over something.
Which it always makes me a little hesitant. Like I'm like, if you are so convinced of something that you can't even hear a different perspective, then I'm like a little hesitant to go there.
Yeah, they just get so angry. It's like a religion. It really is. But it doesn't benefit anything. Like my books, I'm trying to teach people things, you know. My agent and my publicist, we're still pitching to different, and then this procedure takes forever, but we're still pitching to different things. And if something comes out of it, I do want to bring you on board with it. I do, because there's few people that I trust, and I know we don't know each other very well, but I do know that you know more about this business than I do. I've been out of it for about 25 years. And but yeah, no. So if anything ever happens, I will surely reach out. But The books have been selling, and we're waking people up. And I just don't see how flat Earth and round Earth. What does that gain? What do you gain when you know that? It's like, okay, now go make dinner.
It's part of what you at the beginning, taking it back to where you started with the truther movement. And it's like, yes, there is a search, there is a quest for truth. And I think we're all on this, on this path of like, what is truth?
Right.
Um, I find that the more I learn, the more I'm like, truth is infinitely based on perspectives.
Oh yeah.
And
You know how you know that? I tell people
and
this all the
it's so
time.
multidimensional and so much based on consciousness too. Like just
Right.
to finish this point, like, and yeah, I want to hear what you said, but it's like when I like it's almost like I've done ayahuasca journeys, and it's almost like that moment when you think you see it, you're like, aha, and then it transforms right in front of your eyes, and you're like, oh wait, that's not you just I see what you're doing there.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
always more to
It's
the
true.
story.
You know how you
Right.
know that, Sean? It's interesting because you've got people in your life. You've got lots of people in your life. I've got lots of people in my life. But what you think of yourself, how you perceive yourself, your actions, your intentions, and how you are, versus what other people see in you. Not you and another person or two other people have the same view on you. That's just the same thing. It's the same thing with the universe, with trying to gather the information. We're all accessing one consciousness, and we're seeing it through a myriad of ways with our senses, with our filters. And we know things that, like, time doesn't exist. We know that everything's happening simultaneously. We have all these experiments that know all this stuff, and yet we still dream. So in this crazy reality,
Right.
which, to be honest with you, it does sound, even with all the negativity, I think it sounds better than just blowing trumpets all day at God. I don't know
Yes.
about you, but
Yeah. It's fun. I mean, it's it's I think you could say that heaven is a vibration.
yeah,
It's a vibration that we sometimes feel where we're just like we're high, we're like in that moment of like feeling blessed, feeling love, right? And just like joy, and just like
yeah,
wow, that's the state, and it's there, it's attainable. But most of the time we're operating with like fuck, bills, money, let's do this, go there,
distractions.
ah, and that's like the lower vibration. So if we can move our state to a higher vibration, and that's just like it's partly practice, but I also feel like it's part of the wave of what's coming, of just like making it easier if we can let go of these low vibration like attachments, like getting so sucked into like, oh, that didn't go my way, or that didn't work out, or this is wrong. So if we can let ourselves let go of that, just allow ourselves to be like, all right, things are good, life is beautiful, look at
Yeah,
nature, like nature prevails, just like it carries on, right? If we can do
yeah,
more of that, we're more in heaven. And that's what's coming ultimately. So it's like for those that attach too much to like the low vibration material realm, like they'll end up as the transhuman beings essentially.
right,
Won't let go, where the rest of us like it's okay, like move on, like let's shift our vibration, let's allow,
right.
like that's just like being more of a state of allowance and love and joy than in the
You know what
state of
the interesting thing too is?
control,
People
which is
who
what they
have
are.
that kind of mindset, like we do, and like a lot of my listeners do, people who have that kind of mindset, they don't really have a fear of death. Whereas if you notice, the elites that are drinking all the adrenochrome to keep young, to stay alive till they're 90, and they all live 90, 98, 102, they all do. They're terrified. If you've
Yeah,
noticed that, they keep
yeah.
huge security because they're scared that someone's going to destroy them, you know? And they're just terrified of death. They want to live forever. And I think a healthy, balanced person realizes that that's ridiculous. And when we're done doing what we have to do on Earth here, we move on, and then we do something else. You know, it's the knowing that you're an infinite being and you are loved. That is what is the most important thing. And that's the message that we really need to share and get across to people. But unfortunately, people are trapped in this negative loosh loop where they're just arguing about different conspiracies, or like the people who are like, this is a 4D chess psyop, and you're just like, I can see how you think that, and I can kind of see how you got to that conclusion, but I think you're just running your brain on too high for some reason. You know what I mean?
Well, in some, but that doesn't bother me as much. It's like it's just the anger, because yes, it is actually a 4D chess psyop, it's a 5D chess psyop. It's it's everything and more, because it's also it's all so subjective. That's the key. When we recognize that it's so subjective, our reality, that that which we look for, we will find, right? That as soon as we think we found it, it will transform before our eyes, and it will not
I
be
don't.
exactly what we thought it was or what we
Yeah.
wanted necessarily, right?
Yeah.
The more we recognize that, the more we can perhaps go to that next place, which is like both and this and more, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, we just want to, we want to move our energy into a place of being more accepting and open to the new frequencies that are coming in, and just not obstructing it by our own expectation of what it's supposed to look like, how it's supposed to feel, what we're supposed to be doing, all this stuff. It's like
That's
it's
the whole. That's the whole illusion of control thing, right?
yeah, it's the illusion of control, which is what the old paradigm was all about. It's all about control,
Right.
and that's why it's not going to work in the new paradigm.
So, I tell people all the time, and I actually wrote this in my first book. I actually talked about how and I've done the math on this. I've looked back 50,000 years going front and back. We're the only group of people alive who have, well, our generation at least, who has seen the change of a century, a millennium, and a zodiac sign. That will never happen again. And what is your thought on your decision to incarnate at this time? Do you think you made? Do you
Just for
think you
those
made?
reasons.
Hmm?
Just for those reasons.
Yeah.
Because it's curious to me. Study history. I have certain insights into like what maybe has come before. Say before, let's say like memory,
Right.
but we don't know what's coming ahead. We have certain glimpses. Sometimes we get like intuition. Occasionally we're like, oh, I saw this, premonitions, but we come here to experience what's coming. So what is there to talk about? Yeah, we've had great, our lives have been ups and downs and beautiful moments, and tragic moments or sad moments, and everything in between. But we don't know what's coming. So that's what keeps it interesting.
That is. Um, because if we knew the day and time of our death, then that's all we could think about. There's a reason that the universe works in a certain way, and it's for the best. Now, let me ask you a question. The age of Pisces that we just left, I talk about it, and you've read Jordan Maxwell and Santos, and we talk
Well, are
about
you
it.
sure we've left it? Because I've heard different accounts that people say that we haven't transitioned yet, or that we're still like in the transition, or
So people say that, but I'm under the full. So there's a way that you could tell, Sean. Okay, here's how you can tell what age you are. On March 21st, on the spring equinox, okay, if you go to the equator and you watch the sunrise that morning, behind the sun is going to be a sign. That's the sign that we're in. That's how you know what sign we're in. I believe we've been in the age of Aquarius since the Mayan calendar ran out. Because they talk about the end of times, the end of an age. It was the end of
yeah.
an age, not the end of
Well, I
time.
heard that the Mayan calendar, though, is actually according to the Ethiopian calendar is more accurate. It's 2020 was the end of the Mayan calendar, not 2012.
That's possible, but the Ethiopian calendar. Well, the Ethiopians are an interesting people because they have. I don't know if you've ever read these articles. They kind of get buried in the news, but supposedly there's a church that's protecting the Ark of the Covenant in
Yeah, that's an
Ethiopia.
old story. That's an old story. It may have been like I've heard mixed it. Like they have it. Others have said that it's been moved. If they're putting out there in the press, then obviously like it's not necessarily real. But the
Right.
Ethiopians are Jewish. Like historically,
Yeah.
talking about like
Right.
huge amount of Jewish influence.
Right. And they have a different calendar than us. They have it's a 12 month, it's a 13-month calendar. It's 12 months of 30 days and 1 month of 5 days. And they have like the Book of Enoch. They have a complete Bible, whereas we only have 66 books in it. They keep it there. But the interesting thing is the news stories about is that you'll hear stories about like 50, 60 people raiding this church and all getting slaughtered. Like I don't know what kind of security they have because I've seen a picture of it and it's just a guy in a chair outside. But like
What is real, man? What is real?
yeah, right?
Don't trust what you see in the picture in the news. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But then again,
How that gets
what do you make then about the stories that hit the news and then disappear just as quickly?
No, but as I said, I've heard for a long time about the Ethiopians having the Ark of the Covenant. But at the same time, if it's being disseminated to the masses, does that make it real, or does that mean that it's already been moved? right?
Well, I'm under the I believe that everything in the Bible is metaphorical. Everything. I believe that the angels and the demons are just Jungian archetypes, or not even Jungian, but they're just archetypes for real demons, for real angels and stuff. The biblical characters weren't real. I believe that there's just 10 holy sciences encoded in it, and I've got two of them down pat because I've got a friend, Garrick, who's a numerologist in Gematria. He found this outstanding cipher in the Bible with this Bible software. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Bible Code with Michael Drosnin, but he basically takes that to a whole new level because that was like 20 years ago, and this is now, and he's this the information is there if you know how to access it, and this guy knows how to access it. But so my question to you is, let's hypothetically, let's agree that we're in the age of Aquarius right now. Let's just say we're in it. Or you know what, even if we're in a transitionary period, if we're between the lines, because we're at the very least between the lines, if not fully in Aquarius.
Sure.
Do you think this is the age that religion goes away, all religion?
Yeah, we don't need religion. We need faith. You need trust. You need spirit. I think the religious texts are fascinating as far as, as you said, they're quotable. There's some amazing information, but yeah, those blueprints are no longer needed. It's time to live it.
That's what I think too. All right, Sean, my friend, I know you have a meeting in 5 minutes, man. This has been great. I'll send you a link or two. I'm going to have this up today. Really appreciate the conversation. I wanted to talk about the truth of the community, but I didn't realize, and it's no offense to you because I didn't really do my homework on you, but I didn't realize just how vast and eclectic your knowledge was. I would love to have you on for to hear your spiritual journey at another point in the future, if that's something you'd be willing to do.
Yeah, we can do that.
Cool, man. Sean, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Just do me a favor. You said you had a short series with Iconic. Can you just tell everybody, do you have anything in the pipeline coming up? Where can people catch you?
No, I mean, I do my interviews. I have like weekly interviews I release on bu.tv, but the best place to find me is seanstone.info, my website. Yeah, the BU is BEEYOU.tv. I think our interview with you is on there as well. It's got a lot of good cool interviews with people.
Right.
Yeah, B like a buzz bee, U.tv. But yeah, no, I mean, seanstone.info has links to like my work and books, documentaries, interviews, all that kind of stuff.
There's just one more thing I wanted to share with you real quick that just popped into my head. Actually, it's been in and out of my head all day, but my mind's been turning with everything you've been saying. Did you know that they actually have architects that they're putting under something called the DMT drip, which is when they slow drip the DMT into you? And
I heard about that recently.
These architects are going into the DMT realm and they're mapping it out for us.
Did they find the what are they called? The robot midgets or something? The robot elves?
No, they're called the mechanical elves.
The mechanical elves that are racist, apparently.
Are they racist?
There was some articles saying.
Could you imagine if like we went to a higher dimension of like brighter people and they're all racist?
It's so fucking weird. I'm so tired of this like consistently being put out to the mainstream media. This agenda, right, of division. But it was just funny because I remember like there was some articles saying the robot elves, the mechanical elves, were racist. It was just like, okay.
I'm gonna look that up right now. Actually, Sean, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'll send this to you.
You got it, man. Talk to you then.
Take care, man.
Hey.